Yeah, I think we can get started. It's really, really nice to meet you again, Ayokumi. I think our last conversation was, I think, about 2 months or 2 months ago. Yes, 2 months ago. And I went back to my co-founder and I told him, oh, I met this amazing guy. In fact, he has written something on Fido. And I'm like, that's really interesting. So I was looking forward to reading some of your articles on the essay on your website. I hope that once you get it fully fixed up, I'll be able to consume some of those articles. So maybe we should just, since I know you, but the rest of our guests would not know you. So I think rather than just say what's your name and stuff, I think there is this game that we always play, like an icebreaker, and it's two truths and one lie. Okay, so the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks for having me. My name is Ayokumi Ogundapo, as you already know. I'm a Nigerian. I'm starting my career in Lagos. But currently I work for a company called I Am Expert, specializing in identity and access management. We're a pure player, meaning that that's what we focus on and where our expertise is. Basically, I work as a consultant there, and I lead the Microsoft practice for I Am Experts.
I'm Jonathan Unudeme. I'm the co-founder of Trustaige, and what we do at Trustaige is identity and security, making identity simpler and more secure, right? So that's basically what we do for the enterprises. So I have a couple of questions, and the theme of this webinar is beyond passwords, how Nigerian enterprises can, become safer. So I think I would ask you the first question: why do you think passwords? What makes passwords a something that cannot be relied on?
I think answering that question, the first thing I always love to say is to go back to the genesis of password itself. When digital password, just to differentiate that from just ordinary password, password could be word of mouth. What you tell someone as a security answer, maybe that you revalidate later, that can be a password. But digital password was invented in 1961 by MIT. And at the time that they conceptualized the use of digital password, it was to solve a simple challenge where they have multiple people that need to share a mainframe computer, and they want everybody's privacy to be protected. So basically, people that are coming to use those systems are already trusted. And what they are trying to do is just giving them a password that layer on that existing trust to ensure that individual work on the mainframe can be kept separate. Meaning that password do not just come out of the void. There is a context around it, and there is a trust that's already been established among the people that will use it. And that's how password was bettered. Or when internet became a thing, and one thing you need to notice about password was it was initially designed to be used on a mainframe. People who are coming to use password are people who are already known and trusted. Mainframe are not heavily network like we have many systems connected, interconnected, and also on the internet today. So that's how password, that was the initial idea for password. But when internet became a thing, people still, there is that still need for privacy, and what people are already familiar with was just simply adapted, and people continue to use it. Although the context of use has now changed. And I mean, the context of use has now changed, but people do not recognize the advances and the change in the context of use of password. And I believe that's where the genesis of password being a problem actually started from.
So follow up on what you just explained, I learned that the first date cyber breach happened
Yeah.
just a few years after the first password was created. Right.
Mhm.
Somebody who wanted to have extra time to use the mainframe just went
Mm.
and gathered all the whole, found a way to get all the passwords of the different people and started logging them in and using their time to browse. And that was the first data breach. But like you said, these digital passwords, it was built for that specific purpose. But I think as internet began to become more and more exposed, everybody needed a way to secure themselves, and
Mhm.
password became the de facto way to secure themselves. It didn't mean that it's the best way, right? I
Yeah,
also read from research that there were also other ways that they could have created maybe authentication, like questions. What do you know? So what's your
yeah,
mother's name and the likes? But the systems then didn't have enough compute power to manage so many diverse questions. I'm just wondering
mm,
how it must have been then. But it's an interesting thing. Fast forward to 2026, we're still dependent on passwords. So they say identity is a new perimeter, like security.
yeah.
This is a word. Can you explain what this concept means when they say identity is a new perimeter?
Um, okay, I think it's always good to speak about context and how we get to where we are. When I started my career working with one of the well-known and well-established organization in Nigeria. And when I came into IT, there was nothing called cloud. Everything was on premise. So if you're running any service, we own the full stack. You own the server, you own the operating system running on it, you own the application that you are responsible for, and people who are consuming those services are also within the same perimeter as those infrastructure. Now, for an attacker, oftentimes when we conceptualize an attacker or maybe a threat actor, they are usually individual who is sitting remotely behind the computer, trying to breach the security of the organization. Now, because most of your infrastructure are actually protected by your home perimeter, your network, which is not essentially open to the internet or to the cloud, as we love to refer it now, in some way you are heavily protected because most of your critical infrastructure are within that perimeter, logged away from public access. But with the advent of cloud era, a lot of organizations started moving their workload, their services, their application, their servers into the cloud. And because cloud can be accessed from virtually anywhere in the world, so the perimeter that used to serve as a security has disappeared, meaning that all of your infrastructure is open into the world. Now, the only layer we have is verifying who exactly is trying to collect the resources that we now have in the cloud. So basically, in doing that, if you want to verify who, that's a question of an identity. Basically, because the physical perimeter that we used to have around the infrastructure, around the application is no longer there. The attack surface has been widened, and in you being able to, for whoever is securing those applications or access to those applications now in the cloud, the question is whether they can tell who exactly the identity of the person that is trying to connect to it, and the sources that they make in that will actually determine whether the infrastructure they have in the cloud will be protected or otherwise.
Interesting. So I never got this viewpoint that it was because of the fact that it was usually on-premise deployment and the network of that
Yeah, that's very
organization is usually confined to only those in that environment. Is, is that
within
is
the
that
environment.
akin, is that akin to VPN? Is that similar to VPN?
It's similar to VPN. I think before we even go to the cloud, there is that conversation of people needing to access resources securely. And because exposing everything to the internet means that unauthorized access may be gained, if you need legitimate staff, employee, or maybe some associates to work remotely from the comforts of their home or maybe from other regional offices, you need to have some sort of tunneling, secure passage over the internet to access those resources. And that's where the VPN comes in. So it's a way of actually extending the perimeter beyond the physical geographical location of the resources that people are trying to access basically. Yeah. So you're correct in that.
Interesting. It, as one advancement comes,
Yeah.
it opens the door for a security problem, and
Mm-hmm.
we keep on trying to adapt to
Improving. Yeah.
growing, managing the growth. It's like
Mm-hmm.
policy, and it's like regulators playing catch up with technology advancements. Everybody's just
Yeah.
building new things. Regulators are pursuing them. I think
Yeah.
it's kind of like that thing. Why is it the case that the security is not put in the front first? Like if you acquire land in Nigeria,
Yeah.
you know the way Omoniles and land grabbers are. The
Yeah.
first thing you do is to fence and get your land
Yeah.
before you even think of building. So you're kind of securing your property. Why
Mm-hmm.
is that not translated into the workforce? Because the truth is, many organizations put security as last,
Yeah.
right? Many of them. And I was actually a victim too, because my first startup, I never had anything to do with security. The best we
Security.
did was hiring one penetration tester, one cyber security expert to come and do a phishing test on all of the team, just to, and to do like a training basically to spot phishing. That was the only thing
Mm,
we did when it came to security. Every other thing, we didn't even
mm,
enforce multi-factor authentication, right? And we were there, we're running our business, right? We were not conscious of the risk, or we were conscious, but we felt like
the
there's nothing
risks
to
is,
account.
yeah.
Yeah, like it was so minimal. And so,
Yeah.
why is that the case that people put security behind and first go ahead and start building? Why is that the case?
Yeah, before I answer that question, I'm probably just going to underline something that you mentioned. Like a lot of people used to assume that nobody is interested in them. Perhaps because they are small businesses. Um, Attackers are not interested in whether you are a small business or whether you are a big business. If there is money in it for them, or if there is some gain in it for them, because it's not all the time about the money. Sometimes it's just about the truth that I can do this, or this is possible. Basically, that they do that. So
Amazing.
whether whether you are small or you are big, security has to be a forethought, not an afterthought, basically. And also now in answering your sorry, what was the question again? If you
The
could repeat
question
that.
is, the question is, if we are bringing up new technology all the
Yeah.
time,
Okay.
and security is playing catch up,
Yeah.
why should security not be put into first consideration? Then the other things follow, because it's
I
heavy.
think it boils down to knowledge most of the time. No one knowingly would want to harm himself, and if you know something is important, you actually want to get it out of the way first. But I would say the reason is the same reason why a man will just fall in love, so to say, with a lady. And sometimes when his comrades are telling him about, hey, you need to mind the gap, or can't you see some of these faults or that faults? All sense of reasoning is often lost until they are in the marriage, and then the reality is settling in. And that's exactly how it is with most business owners. The same excitement that someone experienced, and incidentally I think I wrote about this maybe last week or last 2 weeks. The same excitement that someone experienced when they fall in love, that's the same excitement that the founders and business owners also experience when they have an idea, an eureka moment, something great. And just like you mentioned, it's a lot of time, a lot of people in Nigeria today, just using that climb as an instance. If you are if you are fortunate to buy a land, it's most likely because you are interested in building. And a lot of people will say, let me start building before I actually put the fence. When the building come up first, I'll think about the fence later. This thing I'm talking about has actually happened to me before. I think there was a time my dad encouraged me into getting a land. I got the land because he wanted the land, not because I have any use for the land. I had the land here for a long time. It used to disturb me to build it, but I was not interested in building. At a point, I was considering that because my dad is, we don't like the area we grew up in. And at the time when we go back home, it's a little bit of a challenge for us to find somewhere to park. So we rarely stay at home. When we are home, all of us just find our way to the hotel and then we come back to the house in the morning. So when at the point when myself and some of my siblings were thinking that okay, maybe instead of hanging around the hotel when we come to our town, why I have land in Ibadan? I have another brother that has land in Ibadan. Now why don't we just basically build? And at that point, we were already considering building, and that died around that time, and then that we just abandoned that. So at a point, we also had a recent event at home, and we're thinking of let's go back home and do something so that if at anybody comes home, we always have a place we can stay. And then we said, okay, maybe we should use my own because it's closer to the center of the town. And when I got there, I was speaking to someone. I said, "Oh, this is a survey plan." By the way, the person said, "No, that can be the survey plan that they've already built to the left side." And he's saying that what he's saying cannot be up to what is on the paper. Right. So for me, it didn't occur to me that if you get a land, one of the things that you want to do, like you mentioned, and possibly from your experience, is first to fence it. I just felt like, okay, I've gotten it just to appease you. It's there. And then it was at the point when we were starting building that someone called my attention to it that some people have already encroached. So the same thing happened to business owner. They are usually just come back by exactly what the excitement is all about. And that is why when someone is starting a new business, it's always good to actually speak to maybe risk practitioners because they are the one that can actually say, oh, I know you are excited, but you need to pay attention to this. You need to address that basically. And which I think is important for digital business. A lot of business nowadays are digital business. And it's always very good to involve security practitioner, risk practitioner earlier, just to ensure that the security aspect of your business is effectively taken care of. And also to mention that when you do risks or when you do security from the beginning, it's usually cheaper for you to do than when you are thinking about doing security as an afterthought. Because if you have a requirement, you have the requirement baked in into your whatever product you are building or whatever security idea you have, I mean, whatever business idea you have. But if you have to think of it as an afterthought, it will either require you to rebuild the whole business, costing you twice or more of what you would have paid, or probably layer a different control to compensate for the gap. And if you are compensating, there's always going to be gap, and that gap might be what an attacker will exploit.
Very correct. I like the way you personalize the whole answer because it's whatever happens in the work world is a
Yeah,
reflection of what happens in the real world,
in real
right?
life, yeah.
Is a reflection of what happens in real life, and it's very interesting how. Sorry about those who encroach on your land. Like,
No, well, I actually was going to take it over. At the point, I just said, well, I don't have time.
please let the sleeping dog
I don't
lie.
have time for it.
It's
Yeah,
it's a very crazy thing that
yeah,
happens on lands and stuff. But
yeah.
once again, sorry about that. So
No, it's all right.
it just reminds me of this dilemma. I don't like to say the chicken and egg problem because it feels like a cliche, but it
Mm,
actually is. So when we're building Trustaige,
yeah,
we are saying zero passwords from the scratch. Like we don't want any. passwords inside our systems. So we ourselves cannot have passwords. We cannot have passwords to
To begin with.
AWS.
Okay.
We can't have passwords to AWS. But how do you access AWS without first having a password, then
Mm,
setting up, you know? So it was a very long thinking process. Eventually we understood that, in fact, it's a policy that I came to understand is a policy for even likes of Google. When you're using Google Workspace, if you are configuring SSO for your
yeah.
organization, the person configuring it
Must have a
can
password.
have a password.
Yeah.
So that was the only reason why we never had a password. Otherwise, it's every system inside Trustaige. We use single sign-on. We use our passkeys to sign into them. It was a costly decision we made because we're going to get to the point of SSO tax, because every tool you're using, every enterprise tool or every
Mm-hmm.
tool that has SSO, you have to be using the enterprise tier. So we
Mm-hmm.
had to use Google Enterprise, GitHub Enterprise, we had to use Slack Enterprise, we had to use a couple of other enterprise solutions so that we are using SSO for everybody in the team and our custom applications SSO. So we're signing with our passkeys. Those it just we wanted to practice what we preach, right? So we
Yeah.
didn't want to think of security as an afterthought, but
Yeah.
security as a first thought. And
Yeah.
I believe that is one of the reasons why a lot of people run from these security conversations, because the truth is it can be costly
Expensive.
sometimes.
Yeah.
It can be costly for a business you've not even validated the thesis. You don't even know if it's going to sell,
Trusted.
and you want me to start investing in security first of all. I believe that something else that also shapes the mind of startup founders is a lot of stuff we read on YC, on accelerator programs. They tell you ship, build in 3 weeks, one month, and
Quickly.
ship
Yeah.
about anything. Ship, get user feedback. And some organizations, after building haphazardly at the start, years after, when they've become so big, they started suffering some of the repercussion of just building,
The
opening things.
decision. Yeah.
Exactly. It's happened live to somebody that I know very well. The
Mm,
company is now a unicorn actually, and some
yeah.
of the little decisions they made that they felt it didn't matter. It was
Together.
that was the gap, just like you said. That was the gap that
Mm,
the attackers used to enter into their system. But fortunately for them, they were able to catch it on time. That brings me to um, this issue of zero trust. So people talk about zero trust, zero trust, zero trust. I think I would like you to first explain the concept of zero trust before, and I will follow up with another question.
okay. Without bugging you with technical terms for zero trust. Zero trust will simply means verifying everything explicitly, not taking things as they seem. For instance, I get a message from you, maybe you send me an SMS saying that can you quickly loan me some money? And I look at the phone, I see that it comes from Jonathan, and without thinking, because I have your details, I send it to you, not knowing that your phone is stolen basically. And whoever has your phone in Nigeria can actually withdraw, just use USSD to transfer all of your money. What I had thought was you. I believe the message because I feel like it looks like you. It came from your phone number that I already know, but it is not explicitly you. Could I have done more to actually check, knowing that it's possible that you are not the one actually speaking? Yes, I could have called to verify that. Are you the one that sent me that message? And then if you said yes, then it's okay, I've validated. And even if I'm validating, I don't want a voice recording because it's easier for someone to do voice simulation basically. I remember there was a time one of my elder brothers sent me a message, "Can I get so amount for so thing?" I look at the person that he has never made this kind of request before, and I'll probably say he trained me as well. So it's something I would transfer if I have that money in my account in an instance. But I just look at it again that it's not a pattern that I know of him. And then I said, are you sure you are the one speaking to me? Are you sure it is you that that is speaking to me? And he mentioned that it is me. Okay. If that's true, where were you on so date? He was not laughing because it's also a security practitioner that is that you are doing MFA for me. I said, correct. That is what I am doing. He then mentioned it. And then he then mentioned only things that people that grew up in the household would have
Yeah.
known. Then we laughed about it and then we completed the transaction and moved on. So basically, zero trust is if you know something is crucial to you, something is important to you, don't take them as its surface value, especially when it involves things that can breach maybe the confidentiality of the information you have, the availability of the information you have, or the integrity of the information or data in your care. You really want to explicitly verify that people that need access to such information are the one accessing it. And if you feel like there is a question mark anywhere in that kind of request, you block it, you don't allow it until you verify that the expected individual is the one making the access.
Okay, that, I think the analogy just hit the nail on the hit need the nail on the head for me,
Mm,
and I think it must have done the same thing for our audience as well. So now this moves me
yeah,
to the question.
yeah,
Now, the way to enforce zero trust that we know in our climb or in the tech world is most organizations enforce multi-factor authentication. You
yeah,
have to you have to use a maybe one-time password through SMS, COTP authenticator. I remember working with one founder, and because he has experience working with an enterprise, every
mm,
single application that you access in that enterprise is a fintech. You have
yeah,
to use a multi-factor authenticator.
yeah,
So it's a way it's just like zero trust. You must confirm that this person is this person.
yeah,
Now, imagine somebody has been able to break in to the system. And now you're saying we are enforcing zero trust for everything you're doing. You must authenticate a multi-step authentication. Now, this person who has been able to break into the system, anytime he's entering somewhere, he's authenticating and re-authenticating, proving that he is a true person. And the system is now designed that it is protecting him because nobody is going to raise a flag because he's re-authenticating, he's using the mass authenticator. So this zero trust is defending or is protecting a bad player within the organization. How do how do you reconcile that?
Um, sorry, if you can rephrase your question just to be sure that I
Yeah.
get you right.
So we're enforcing zero trust,
Yeah,
right? Let's just say, using the analogy you gave, let's just
yeah,
say maybe um maybe the person, maybe
mhm,
someone sends me a message and I'm like, could this person be really the person?
yeah,
Okay. I want to confirm, and I tell the person,
yeah.
oh yeah, where did you grow up? But unknown to me, the
Someone
person was
exploiting the trust that
exactly
you existed trust. Okay.
exactly.
Um, yeah, that happens a lot, and I always even if you when you're looking for your greatest risk, look at the people that you already give it so much trust. If you look at, and I think I love citing Nigeria as an instance, if you look at in a lot of banks and financial institutions, I know because I work in financial institution in Nigeria. In a lot of financial institutions in Nigeria, they suffer silently. When they suffer breach, they don't shout about it, they don't make noise about it, and then they try to deal with it internally. They sweep it under the carpet so that it doesn't become in news and maybe the public do not judge them based on what they did or failed to do, basically. And if you look at for people who have internal information about some of these things going on, you always find out that majority of the fraud perpetrated within bank or the loss incidents you have within banks and most of the financial institutions in Nigeria are usually due to internal threats. the employee that you yourself have employed given access to the system, and sometimes also in connivance, someone that already has an access, paving way for an external actor to come and do something within your environment where they make most out with the money. How do you deal with the trust that you've already established? I think it still goes back to the conversation of that we have earlier about the zero trust. Zero trust means verifying everything explicitly. If you have a question mark about maybe a particular, if you are suspicious of any activity, or if you are suspicious of any activity, stop that access first. Resolve that challenge through your verification rights, and when you are sure that that is already done, then you can progress with giving someone access. And maybe an instance would be okay. I cited an instance of what currently happens in most bank and even most of the unicorn fintech in Nigeria, and how they suffer silently. Yeah, so a lot of time I would say is to verify explicitly. And where you made mention of the use of SSO and people just re-authenticating and going on. If someone already has access to your environment, I think it can be, if you are looking at the validity of the authentication that they are bringing alone, that is a challenge. And in fact, it's you already have another risk on your hand already if all you do is just the credential that is provided. For instance, if a lot of people, when they are accessing a system, they look at where is this person has provided the password, the MFA is correct. I can tell you like 4 5 different ways where without having access to your organization, I can social engineer any of your employee to provide password into a fake site that I control, do MFA verification to a safe fake site that I control, and then even use that. I might even get them to actually do an authentication and I steal their OAuth token. And if I have their OAuth token, I can use the OAuth token for access, meaning that even beyond password and MFA, if I have access to your OAuth token, I can maintain persistence within your environment and I'll never be detected, except you have a culture of
Different.
except yeah, except you have a culture of looking at different authentication sessions and looking for persistence within your environment. Yeah, so I think beyond just password, beyond MFA, you need to look at, I one example instance I cited is the use of maybe phishing technique to obtain the credential or even token that I can reuse. Basically, you need to ensure that whatever method you are using is phishing resistant, and you also need to take a cognizance of maybe other attributes that support authentication, like the devices that people are coming from. If it's not a trusted device, suspect it. And if it's coming from an unusual suspect it, and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so behavioral traits, understanding if this is actually, some people even use, I'll get to that, but it's
Mm.
very interesting. And you mentioned phishing resistant authentication systems, and of course we know that Fido is championing that. But the truth is, of course you've been in the Nigerian system. It's, first of all, I don't know why, but there is always this resistance and defensiveness of most guys you speak to when it comes to security.
Yeah.
Everybody likes to feel like, oh, my security is sorted, I'm sorted. But we still keep hearing of security breaches outside the ones that they don't announce, because we know that many of them happen that they don't announce. But the few that they announce, we hear. But there's still this level of, you know, no, it can't happen to us. We are very secure. The moment you try to talk about security, people just get their guards up. I don't know. Is that why is that the case?
I think there is something they call is it crony something Drugal effect, where you have people that believe that they know when they don't know. So it's very central to bias. I think Johnny Kruger effect. You have some people unconscious bias. So basically, they don't know and they don't know they don't know, and those are the dangerous set of people to ever to deal with. In a lot, I would say that security is not static. Is not static. Password was sufficient at the time. MFA was sufficient at the time. MFA is password is no longer sufficient. MFA is no longer sufficient. We're talking about phishing resistance. Phishing resistance is a little secure at the moment, but there are instances also where even phishing resistance authentication are becoming insufficient. What really makes authentication maybe sufficient now is whether it can be invoked remotely or it has to be initiated locally. And I think that is the feature of authentication. For people like that, I think my advice to them is always to we don't know enough because things are evolving. If you password was sufficient at the time, attackers saw that oh there is the defense, they became I mean they were looking for opportunities how to circumvent that. They noticed how to brute force password to guess password. And after that, we felt like okay, MFA is going to be an additional layer. What you have now, they can fish you to get the MFA. We're talking about phishing resistance MFA, and also phishing resistance MFA. Shoulder stuffing can be sufficient because you don't even know why you are completing your MFA. The next person behind you might be the threat actor. We spoke about internal threat actor just a while ago. Might just should have served you to pick that authentication code and relay it to whoever needs to have it, basically. So I think one thing we should appreciate with security is it is not static, it is moving. And what you don't know, you don't know. To assume that you know is very, very dangerous and costly. So when someone is talking, regardless of your experience and your knowledge, always be open to listen first and to understand from their perspective, because oftentimes you get something more than what you already know.
Thank you. So I want to ask, hope my telling somebody this is not a bad thing, because I was having a conversation with one co-founder in the fintech
Yeah,
space, and you know, we had a physical meeting.
yeah,
Well, maybe because he was tilting towards sales, because of course I wanted to sell my solution. Maybe people
yeah.
always defend when it comes to sales, but it was more of a conversation where just trying to understand, and it was all defensive. No, we have this security system in place. I cannot even tell you about my security. I I feel like if you are secure, there's
Yeah.
no need to say I can't tell you the security we are using. Like
Okay.
what I mean, for instance, if you visit let's say one password, for instance, one password will put logos of organizations that that trust them. If you
Mm-hmm.
visit some certain, let's say beyond identity, you will see that some
Mm.
certain companies use beyond identity for their security.
Beyond trust.
Yeah, even beyond identity, there's another beyond
Yeah.
identity. There's a
Oh,
company like
okay.
that. Yes,
Yeah.
and you don't really. So if I need to know, if I know you work with Google, and I know that Google uses, okay, let me not say Google, maybe I know you work with a company, I know the company uses this mode of authentication or the security. Does that make them vulnerable?
It can make them vulnerable. Um, in for people who are into active, maybe threat hunting, there is something they call a kill chain. In the kill chain, if you, I mean, cyber kill chain, in the kill chain, it documents, it's a military practice, and if they want to attack anything, the first thing they do is gather as much information as they can gather on the victim and then begin to plan. The same thing also is applicable in cyber. If you want to breach an organization, you need to have understanding of what they have. And if you have understanding of what they have, I always say that there is no, and it is not just me, I think it's an industry norm, and which has been accepted. There is nothing like 100% security. So basically, if I know the application you are using, I can go and research the vulnerability that has been disclosed for that product. And if I have the vulnerability disclosed for that product, I can go and look for exploits for that vulnerability. If I have the exploits, I can weaponize the exploits to breach you, basically. So I think for people who are security conscious, except you have some form of maybe non-disclosure agreement in place or some other contracts that says that you cannot use the information that they are giving you against them, basically. Nobody would just by first contact provide information about their infrastructure to you. That's really unsafe. And in a way, I actually align with those individuals.
Okay, that's correct. But
Yeah.
the goal is not to feel like uh we are the safest. Nothing can. The goal is
Yeah,
to
of course. Yeah.
always understand what is the best, what's the next safest thing that is out there,
Yeah.
right? Never
Always
feel
learning.
like you said, never feel like you got it all covered,
Yep.
and meanwhile you don't even know, you don't even really know what's happening, right?
Exactly.
And it's just the same zero trust where you don't even know if someone
Yeah.
a bad player. Unfortunately,
Exactly.
unfortunately, this some of these guys were actually attacked not too long ago. So it's now, will I rejoice over unrighteousness? I will not do that. But I would not go and meet the person that should you say all your security is secure, all your
Mm.
security is in place and everything. How come you were attacked and they lost a lot of money? Right. So
Yeah.
it's always important to, okay, what's out there? How can I become even more secure? Just like
Yeah.
you say, how can I make more money? It's the same thing you
Yeah.
say, how can I be more secure?
Yeah.
So we talked about passwordless authentication
Yeah.
and how this is now the standard. In fact, NIST is proposing it. I was reading that PCI DSS 4.1 is now enforcing phishing resistant authentication
Mm-hmm.
for organizations. National Cyber Security Center in the UK, I read recently that they are now solidly behind passkeys. Everybody should
Yeah.
start adopting passkeys to be more secure. FIDO, WebAuthn, the web is basically saying passkeys are the more secure way to go about it. But I'll come to Nigeria. Sorry, I'm going to mention this. So passkey created by FIDO. Of course, you know that. And they did a passkey report. They usually do an annual passkey report, and in the report, they captured, I think, about 10 countries, or they captured a lot of countries in their
Mm.
survey, and Africa was not represented. Yeah, Africa was not represented, and I was like, why? So I had to even reach out to the leadership of
Because
FIDO.
of, yeah.
Yes, of FIDO, and we had a conversation, and they said that they were open to, having a partnership with us and to see how we can start promoting passkeys for education, marketing content, and all those things as soon as we become members of FIDO, right? So I also did some research, and I noticed that there was actually no African country, um, company. Maybe I should not generalize. Maybe one or two African companies were members of FIDO. The
Fire
pass
Alliance. Yeah.
Yes, FIDO Alliance. The pass keys are now widely adopted in organizations. Like they say, about 60% of the organizations that were sampled have started using pass keys, and those that are not using it already are already in pilot tests, right? So we know that we don't really start building technology like here in Africa, in Nigeria, but we adopt those technology. What do you think would make Nigerians to say, "Oh, let us start adopting this"? Do you think it has to come from policy point of view? What do you think would make Nigerians to say, "Okay, let's start adopting passkey"? Because not only is passkey safer, it's also simpler and faster. So it just has so many upsides. But there seems to be maybe zero knowledge, but the adoption rate is really slow. So what do you think we need to do if we're going to become a more secure place? Should it come from the regulators like the way Cyber Security Center of the UK did, or maybe US? Japan now has agreed to start using passkey. The country itself is now using passkeys. So how do you think we would start real adoption of passkeys and providers?
Yeah, I think I always say that regulation is good because sometimes it can force the hands of people who are unwilling to change. to make that change in the better interest of everyone. I think you mentioned the you mentioned the regulatory body for different countries and how they are pushing for better security through the use of passkey. In my consulting experience as well, one of the questions we always love to ask if we're on any project is the reason why, what are the drivers for that project, basically. And most time you hear people say something like, there is one standard called SOX, basically, usually used by financial institutions, started in the US but adopted worldwide. For SOX, one of the regulation is actually a tightly controlled access management, and that always forces a lot of organizations to go and invest heavily in security solution, even though they don't want to make that spend. They know that they will not be compliant to that regulation, and if they are not compliant with that regulation, they are losing trust of customers, basically, and that in a way force their hand to want to do. And there I say regulation is good, but organizations would actually need to take more effort in protecting their own interests. They don't need for a regulator to come and tell them how to do business, for them to do what they believe is the right thing. If you believe that if I'm entrusting my data into your hand, it's because of some level of trust that I have that you keep the data secure. So if you that trust is being broken when you know the right thing to do, but you refuse to do it, by ensuring that you put maximum protection on the information that I've given to you, you lose your customer trust. And a lot of people always have something, beyond you being affected, a lot of individual may be affected as well. For instance, imagine someone who has money in the bank and as an emergency, he's just been told that his loved one had an accident. They've rushed this individual to the hospital, and at the hospital, they've asked that if certain money is not deposited, that individual will not be treated. And all of a sudden, your company was just breached. All of the money vanished, and all simply because your security has a lot of question mark. And now that would your inefficiency will probably cost this individual another loss of life beyond the money that is being lost. So people and organizations need to begin to think beyond just the face value of what the cost might be to those enterprise. There are also irreparable damage that when those trusts are exploited could mean for people who have trusted you, either with their money, their data, or whatever it is that you are keeping with them. So I believe all organizations should actually be self-motivated to be at the forefront of security. Don't wait for regulation. In places like Nigeria, regulation is good, especially when it is initiated by central bank. It's usually very good because it's first bank and other big organization in financial sector to do the right thing. But this is for financial space. What about other people or key players in the national architecture who are not in financial? Who is regulating them? I think this is where a bigger question should come. And I'll say that we as consumers also have power to make a demand. If I see that you are not secure enough by all standard or by the things that you're supposed to have, I don't patronize you, I go to your competition that is doing the right thing. So if a lot of consumers are passing this feedback that beyond you just providing the service, this is additional thing we are expecting from you, that in a way can also force the hand of businesses to also invest in security and doing the right thing. As well, regulation is good, and I'll say that both methods should be exploited. Organizations should be self-driven, should not wait for regulators, but regulators should step in where people um, are failing to take initiative. And also, we as consumers, we also have a part to play in letting the businesses know that I prefer this one over you, and this is because they are taking security serious.
Thanks. That makes a lot of sense. As a matter of fact, there's for organizations in the US that have SOC 2, they don't they
Yeah,
don't like to they don't like to patronize vendors that don't have SOC 2.
yeah,
Because if you patronize them vendors that don't have SOC 2, you are violating your own SOC 2. You're no
Up to
longer
yeah,
compliant. You want
yeah,
to remain compliant. So it just forces even new startups.
yeah,
It just forces them to start thinking of software, especially if they're going to be focusing on the enterprise market.
yeah,
It's a very interesting thing, but I think we're going to get there. We always take our
yeah.
time to get there, but we eventually get there.
But
Um,
don't get there too late.
we, I hope we don't get there too late. I
Yeah.
don't think there's going to be a too late though. It will just happen. Things will just happen, and
I know
eventually, but
there can be it can be too late. I think you if you have some company like TravelX, I don't know. I think TravelX should mean a name to everyone, but TravelX was sunset by a cyber breach that they experienced, and it's a very promising business, but they actually suffered an incident, and the cost of coming out of it is much more than the cost of the whole valuation of the business. So it
oh,
makes sense for them to go on that. So in their case,
it
they
was.
realized too late. So basically, and that can be the reality of most businesses that refuse to take initiative when security is concerned. Yeah,
I agree with you. It can be too late. It can actually be too late, and
yeah,
whether we like it or not, it's not. It's not a matter of prayer. It's a matter
yeah.
of doing. It's a matter of doing
Doing,
what you should do.
yeah, at the
Otherwise,
right time.
those guys they're not smiling. Very
Yeah,
interesting. Um, I will not talk about this, but it's every conversation that doesn't have AI now feels like it's not a real
yeah,
conversation, right?
mm,
And
yeah,
Okta, one of our competitors in the US, they are leading, of course. They started
mm,
doing this cross app access for organizations and agents because a lot of people now use agents,
mm,
and now they're making a standard for agents authentication into
yeah,
different applications. It's also a thing now because agents have started doing what humans do, so they need an identity. So I
yeah,
think maybe we could also have this conversation in the future because we part of our goals is, although it's also to make identities for agents, anybody within the organization.
yeah,
That will that will come later in the future, but it's something we're actively trying to do, and we're actively pushing or preaching passkey and phishing-resistant authentication, as
mm,
well as mobile device management and device trust. So
yeah,
we just want to ensure that every organization is safe from the identity, because the identity, the individuals in the organizations are the ones who build or who are behind the success of the organization. So if you
yeah,
can secure each individual, then the organization is most likely secure.
yeah,
We didn't talk about any other security breach outside phishing attacks, because we know that from our research, over 80% of attacks in organization comes from phishing. Some spear phishing, some regular phishing, just throw to everybody. And
yeah,
the other ones, we also mentioned one internal, right?
yeah.
Other ones internal. So is there one or two other ones that don't necessarily have to do with identity? Those other maybe
Mm.
10% of cases. Maybe just touch on it. Maybe just one.
Yeah, I think there is one particular publication that I love to read every year. I always wait for it. It's very soon data breach incident report. And what it always do is aggregate data about different incidents that has happened across the globe and spotlight, put them into category. What has happened, basically, what is not happening. And like you mentioned, they say that true in every of the three incidents, and that has been consistent from 2020 up until 2025. So true in every three of cyber incidents is related to identity. And the other one over three is among several things. One being vulnerabilities. If people have open vulnerabilities that they are not paying attention to or remediating, it can usually lead into a breach. You have a open web server, they've said that the web service you are using is not secured. People can bypass your security to access your backend, and people are not proactive about remediating vulnerabilities. That is another issue. That's one issue. that do happen, and one conduit also for attack. Another conduit for attack is misconfiguration or leaving things as default. You've just bought a new solution off the shelf. Everybody knows the default password because when a new product comes up, you first need to have some form of access, like you mentioned, to get into it, and then before you configure things. So a lot of people buy new solutions without looking at the password. I walked up into an environment before where I needed access to the voice gateway, and the password, the username and the password to the voice gateway was Cisco and Cisco one, which is and unfortunately also this router was sitting on perimeter, meaning that it can be accessed from outside of the network. They are using that to connect to a provider, an ISP, and everybody, because ISP will have that perimeter that is controlled, but also open and accessible to other customers on that network. So as a customer, if I decide to just be scanning that environment, I can find your router. And if I find your router and I just test the default password, I can use that. So if I make a call from my organization, I can ensure that the organization is the one getting billed for that.
Hmm.
Basically. So I mean, not changing the default authentication settings in an application or new system you are onboarding can be another issue. I think in addition to identity, those are two topmost reasons for breach as well.
Interesting. Interesting.
And I think another one is we're talking that we're in the era of the cloud. Another one is thinking that the cloud is responsible for your security. In cloud, there is what they call a concept of shared responsibility. There is what the cloud provide service providers, the CSPs are responsible for. There is what you also are responsible for. So you are responsible for the safety and the security of your data. They are responsible for the platform. So if you feel like, oh, it's we're using Microsoft service or we're using Google service and security has been taken care of by default, that's a big lie. And then you just open up yourself. So if you are going for a cloud service, you need to understand the shared responsibility model, what the provider are meant to do and what you are meant to do, and for you to be dutiful in doing what you need to do. If that is not being done, also, you can open up yourself, which is the fourth most important topic when it comes to securing the threat landscape.
Interesting. Interesting. There's so many things to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I, we're running up already. We're running up. It's funny that it's already 1 hour and it's as if we can just keep going on. So
Yeah.
you mentioned vulnerability on passkeys. I'll be on phishing resistant authentication. But so far we with the way Fido built Fido decided to build a means of authentication that cannot be fished mathematically, according to them, right? And so some people have already found a backdoor in, and it comes from if I'm onboarding a new employee and I'm
Yeah.
asking them to set up their systems. If that employee, I'm sending the first mail to the person to onboard and create a passkey. If somebody else took that email, an attacker, and actually authenticated himself, created a passkey, we've already opened ourselves up. So now we are saying that, fine, while this is a system that is not easily broken mathematically, but people can still find their way into your systems at the point of entry. Because they've taken the identity of somebody else and you don't know. You think that that person has actually created their passkeys, and now that person is in your system and they're doing everything they want to do in your system. You do not know that. So one of the ways that people came about try to fix that problem is when they are onboarding someone into their systems, they usually have a meeting with the person, send
Yeah.
the link to create a passkeys, and so they've added an identity card. So you have to verify with your national identity card.
Yeah.
Then they use that as
Your
another
full
factor
address.
authentication. Yes, yes. So
Mhm.
multi-factor authentication along with passkeys. So then one other way people are also compromising the system is through um, recovery, account recovery.
Yeah.
You want to recover your, maybe I lost access to my laptop. I want to
Yeah.
create a new passkey. That
Yeah.
recovery mode is just like you built a very big house with iron doors, then by the
Mm-hmm.
side you put windows, glass windows that
Mm.
can be broken easily. So they will leave the iron door, and instead of trying to break through the iron door, they just go to the windows and break the
So you
windows
want to.
for
Mm-hmm.
account recovery. And from the recovery system, they are into your into your door. So one thing we we did in Trustaige was
Mm.
we ensured that account recovery, the same level of attention we paid to even setting up the accounts, is the same level of attention into account recovery. You can't just recover your accounts and you're into the system. You have to do the
Yeah.
same flow of starting up like a new employee, right? So
Mm.
that was something. I think it's a broad topic. It's a broad topic, and I think on other conversations, if we are able to, if I'm fortunate to have your time again some other time, maybe a
Yeah.
larger session, we'll be able to do that. And we're actually even hoping to start a real authenticate or verify conference, right, where we bring experts from different parts of the world to let
Mm.
Africans actually even be in the picture of those adopting real security solutions like passkeys.
Yeah.
It's something that we are planning to do as an organization. Maybe that would be our contribution as we call it. How do they put this thing?
Give
CSR.
back.
Yeah, that would be our kickback. I don't know. So thank you
Yeah.
so. I don't know if you have any one or two words before we part. And if anyone on the audience has questions, please kindly drop your question in the chat box, or message, in-call message, and would respond to the message.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
you
think
drop the.
about.
Okay, so yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. I think about the. I mean, it's just more of a summary of the conversations we've had so far. One thing I always say: security is ever evolving, and for every player in the industry, we I think majority recognize that we always need to learn, open up ourselves to learning. Saying that we're secure and you can't be breached is a fallacy. It's not true. Even CISA that write and create standard for how security should be in UK, I mean sorry, in the US is getting breached. And if the major pioneer, the spearhead for a national security themselves are getting breached, you are taking template from them to copy, you can't say that you are secure. So I think we, as a practitioner, we all need to be humble enough, first of all, to open up ourselves to learning. That is very, very important. And I must also say that because something is very secure today, does not mean that it will forever remain secure. Password was sufficient at the point, like I mentioned. MFA was sufficient at the point, like I mentioned. Later, we saw that MFA is no longer sufficient. We were talking about phishing-resistant MFA, and now we have moved away from phishing-resistant MFA into FIDO key, and passkey, basically. I think while this work presently, we still need to recognize that security is a continuum. It keeps moving. And for us as well, we need to keep up with the pace so that we don't get left behind. And that would be my passing message to everyone on the call.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. So
Yeah.
I think the form there is for you to just drop your feedback or your reviews on the webinar. And if you missed anything, the video will be uploaded on our YouTube, and would
Okay.
also share with everyone who joined the call. Thank you so much, Ayokumi. It was a privilege to have you, and
Yeah.
we look
Same,
forward to
same here.
keeping in touch
Yeah,
and
same here.
sharing all that information. I think I would like to feature your on your website, maybe write write an
Well,
article.
I just have I had one previously hosted somewhere else. So
Okay.
it was expiring, and I felt like I was paying too much on that platform. So I moved to another platform. But while working on it, I've not had time enough to I've not had time to look at it. I've been very, very busy recently. I think maybe by end of July I should have some break. By then I'll have time to go back and finish it up.
Yeah, I guess summer break. Go and do some vacation.
Exactly.
All right, that's
Exactly.
fine. Thank you so much.
Eh,
It was a
You're
pleasure
welcome.
to have
Yeah, the
this
pleasure is mine. The
with
pleasure
you.
is mine. Yeah,
Um,
thank you.
look
Yeah.
forward to seeing you again
All
in the
right.
future. And thank you to our amazing audience for staying this long on the call. And I hope it was really insightful for you all through the while. We'll keep on
Yeah.
bringing much more educational content to the fore. We're
Yeah.
Trustaige. Our goal is to ensure everybody is secure. Yeah.
Mm.
Bye.